Remember, we have to meet that policy. Okay, guys, thanks so much. All right, then, here we go. So today we're gonna be working on task 3. So remember, we're in the speaking section. We remember that in the speaking, we have 4 tasks, right? 4 questions. We have seen the first one, the independent one, in which you're just asked about your opinion on something. We have seen the second one, and starting from the second one, all of them are integrated. So it's not about your opinion anymore. It's you summarizing something. So we have seen, we went through the second one last class. You practiced it yesterday. And today we're moving on to the third one. Now, the third and the fourth one, to be honest, are a bit different, but they're similar to each other. I don't know if you know what I mean. So in this task, it's not going to be that casual anymore. So you won't have like conversations or that kind of stuff. It'll get academic now. So you will have some more serious stuff, you could say. And yeah, so the content is a bit different. The structure is kind of the same thing. You have to read something for 50 seconds, something like this long, not that long as you can see. Then you're going to be having to listen to something. It's not going to be a conversation anymore. What you will have to listen to will be a lecture. So you guys remember what a lecture is? Anybody can tell me? I think we have the final lecture, haven't we? So what's a lecture? Sorry, is someone saying something? A lecture, remember, is just a class, right? It's a college class. So it's a professor explaining a topic. That's a lecture. So you will read for 50 seconds, a short passage, then you will listen to a lecture, and then you will be given 30 seconds to prepare your response. Same time, 30 seconds to prepare. And 60 seconds or 1 minute to deliver your response and speak. Okay, so the timing, the structure, everything's the same except content. That's the only thing that's going to change. Okay, so any questions about this, about the timing or what you have to do? Read, listen, and 30 to prepare, 60 to speak. Is that okay? Questions? All right, so let's go to content. Let's see what exactly you're going to be reading and listening to and what you have to do. So in the reading, you will have this. First, you will see the title, and then you will have a short text. So the first thing I will say today is always read the title. And I know that I'm always saying the same thing, but in this case, specifically and particularly, is even more important for you guys to read the title. Because this is not a summary anymore. This is not a hint that they give you. This is the actual real topic, okay? So this is a key term that you have to remember, that you have to mention in your response. So you have to do this. You have to mention this term in your response. So you better remember what that is, all right? Now, next thing, this is always gonna be like a term. And what you have to do here, what you will have here is just like a short explanation of what is term. So you could have different types of information. Maybe you have some data about it. Maybe you even have an example or a description, anything you can think of. But there's one thing that you're gonna be, there's one goal that you need to achieve here, and that is finding the definition of this topic. So that's your job here. When you're reading, the one thing that you need to focus on is discovering what that definition is. So you just gotta figure out your way of finding that definition. I don't know where that's gonna be. It could be at the beginning, it could be halfway through, at the end, but it's certainly gonna be there. And your job is to find that. Okay, so sometimes you got some red flags, something like this is called, or this is defined as, or we call. So if you got those words, then it's easier for you. But even if you don't have them, I'm sure you guys are going to be able to do that. But the basic thing is find out what the definition of that topic is. Okay. So, all right. Now, another thing before we read and look at the example, let me tell you about the topics that you could have. So in this task, you will find like the most common topics are psychology, biology, and business. Okay, so those are the ones that you're probably gonna see the most. To be honest, I don't think you're gonna have something that's not psychology, biology, or business. You could, but that will be like an extraordinary case, and it will be like, chances are you will not have one of those. All right, so if you got a psychology topic, then I think, like personally, I think that's the easiest one because it's all about, our mind, how our mind works, how we interact with each other, how we process emotions, how we respond to pain, how we learn, that kind of stuff. And I think it's easy because of the vocabulary mainly. So you're not going to find any new words here. I wouldn't say you will find any new words. You probably won't. Now, if you got a biology topic, then it is a bit harder because you got some new words. Maybe you got some data, names of weird animals or weird plants. So it is a bit hard. But it's still not rocket science. I think you can get through it just fine. If it's biology, it'll probably be on animals, plants. I haven't seen really a biology topic about humans. So animals or plants, it's about how they're organized, how their life processes work, how they relate, I don't know, how their relationships work, how they adapt. That's something that I have seen a lot, like how animals adapt to climate change, or how plants have developed certain adaptations to eat more. All right, so I have seen a lot of that type of question. And finally, if you got business, which is also quite easy, it's probably about marketing techniques, advertising strategies, that kind of thing, so it's not going to be hard business. It'll just be something about marketing or advertising or that kind of stuff. Now, of course, there's a minimum chance that you will find an art or history or literature, sociology, geology, interior design, and different types of topics in this task, but it's not that likely. So I wouldn't practice with those because you're probably gonna have one of these three. So just saying. Okay. So any questions about that? Any questions so far in general? We okay? All right, then. So let's get to our first example. We're not gonna take long. So this is the reading. We have said that the first thing you do is you read the title, in this case, behavior modification. Now, we're gonna read this thing here, and we're gonna try to find that definition. The question is, what's behavior modification? That's what you're gonna have to find. So, okay, who can read this? Will anybody wanna read?
I can.
Okay, great, Adrian, thanks.
Behavior modification, topic, a term. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences of their actions. When an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences, that behavior is likely to be repeated. An unpleasant consequence, on the other hand, discourages further repetition of the behavior. While behavior modification can be observed in experiments, it also occurs frequently in everyday settings, when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequence of that behavior.
Okay, thanks so much, Adrian. So, Who can tell me what behavior modification is or where we have the definition? Has anybody got it yet?
Maybe the last sentence describes well what it's behavior modification.
Okay, so this one here, right? When individuals change their behavior.
Yep.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, you got it. So when individuals change their behavior based on what they've learned about the consequences of that behavior, that's exactly what behavior modification is. I think you kind of got it at the beginning as well. This one here, like individuals, it could be, sometimes you will have it in different places, probably not. As I was saying, you know, I don't know where it's gonna be, but as long as you go for one, the one that you consider easier, that's okay. So what I can say to you here is the same that I said for task 2. Remember in the reading I said, try to summarize it as much as you can, make it brief, because that's just gonna be like a short, like just one portion of your response. It's not the most important part in your response, so you gotta make it as quick as possible. So just focus on finding that definition, and if you can paraphrase it a bit, maybe. If not, then that's okay as well. Anyhow, you're gonna be showing your vocabulary later, so you don't have to worry too much about not copying and pasting. You know, you can actually do that here, because when you're talking about the lecture, you are gonna have to use your own vocabulary. So, all right, with that said, any questions about the reading or what you have to do here? You can take some notes, like keywords. I would write something like behavior modification and maybe change, behavior, consequences. That's it, you know, you're gonna remember. But you're gonna have the reading all during the task, you know, so it's gonna stay there. It's not gonna go anywhere. You can actually go back when you're preparing, but I also wouldn't recommend you do that, but it's gonna be there. So any questions now before we move on? Okay, so what about the lecture? Now, in the lecture, you will have some real world examples of this topic. So whatever you had in the reading, whatever concept you saw in the reading, the professor will illustrate that with a real or 1 or 2 real world examples of it. So you're gonna listen to when or how we see this topic or this concept, behavior modification, in the real world, in action. So that's what the lecture will be about. Now, depending on the topic, you will have either 1 or 2 examples. So if it's a psychology topic, you will always have just 1 example. Okay, and if it's a biology topic, you will always have 2 examples. Now, if it's a business topic, you can have either 1 or 2. Sometimes you have just 1, sometimes you have 1 like divided into 2 parts, but you're gonna see that it's not that hard. I think business is actually one of the easiest ones, so it shouldn't be a problem. Biology is probably the hardest one, and you got 2. So psychology is always 1 example, biology is always 2, and business is sometimes 1, sometimes 2, okay? Now, what are your examples gonna be like? So if you got 1 example in a psychology topic, it's always gonna be one of these 2 options. It's either a story. Now, it could be a story from the professor's own experience, something like, when I was younger, I used to do this and I changed my behavior based on this because this happened, and like a personal story. It could be a story from a friend, maybe of the professors, or it could be a more general example. So it could be something like, so we can see that old people do this a lot, and they change their behavior in this way, and they act in that way. So it could be a general example, Or something that I have seen quite often is experiments. So sometimes you have something like, all right, so you put two groups of people in a room and you ask them to do this, and this is how they behave, and blah, blah, blah. So you got those three options, okay? It could be a story, it could be a general example, or it could be an experiment. It doesn't really matter what you have. I think it's quite easy to understand. And one tip I could give you there is try to always look for how the ideas are connected. So if it's an experiment, you will probably have a sequence of events, right? Like first, you have two groups of people. Second, you ask them to do this. And third, they respond in this way. So look at the sequence of events. You can guide yourself with transitions. Look for any cause-effect relationships, like if this happens, then this other thing happens, or this happens because of that, before and after. Just pay attention to those transitions. I think that'll give you a good idea. Like if you have a however, then you know it's the opposite. Or if you have as a result, then you know it's an effect, right? So pay attention to those words and look for that connection between ideas. Now, if you have a biology topic, then it'll probably be two animals or two plants. So if you have something like camouflage. So camouflage is when animals change their colors or their shape in order to hide themselves from predators. And then your examples will be two animals. So the albatross does this and the other animal does that. Okay, so you got two examples. Or if it's something about plants, then you got two plants. Okay, so it's always the same. And if you have business, then it's quite, it's not that predictable. It could be a story. So it could be something like, there was this person that was an entrepreneur and, I don't know, put up this business and this happened. Or it could be two names of a company or two strategies. I don't know. But you will see. So I think that's it about the lecture. Any questions now? Questions? All right. So now we're gonna listen to the lecture for this article. So can anybody tell me what this is about? Is this a psychology, business, or biology topic?
Psychology.
Good. Yeah, it's psychology because we're talking about behavior and stuff. So how many examples are we gonna have? One. Yeah, we will have just one example. Let's listen to it. Another thing I wanted to say, you only have 60 seconds. So you're just gonna have to prioritize some information, over other. So the way that you're gonna know when something is relevant or not is whether that's closely related to this. So when you're listening, here's another tip. Look for like things that illustrate each part of the definition. So you're looking for individuals. So pay attention and listen to what individuals are we referring to? Is it maybe like people from this age group or people from that part of the world, maybe Indian people? Look for what individuals we're referring to. Look at the behavior that we're talking about, the consequences, the action. So look for things that illustrate this concept, okay? That's what's relevant. We're gonna try and do that. All right, so please get a piece of paper to take some notes. Here it goes.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic in a psychology class. This happens all the time with kids in schools. Say there's a little boy or girl who's just starting school. Well, they're not really used to the rules about proper behavior for a classroom. So at the beginning they might, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they're supposed to be sitting down. Just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desks when everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon, they'll learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They'll also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, they're rewarded. The teacher tells them she's proud of them and maybe puts little happy face stickers on their homework. Now that their behavior gets a good reaction from the teacher, the kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to. Using the example from the lecture, explain what behavior modification is and how it works.
Okay, guys. So I actually have the transcript of the lecture here. We're going to be analyzing. But before we do that, can anybody explain what the lecture was about, or how has the professor illustrated the concept of behavior modification? What's the example? Who can tell me that? Come on, guys.
His example was supported by his example was supported with some kids' behaviors at school. He said that when they had bad behaviors, they had the teacher punishes them. So they learned that kind of behavior gets them in trouble. And on the other hand, when they have a good behavior, they get a prize. So they know for the future that kind of behavior is good, and that's how they change, something like that.
Okay, Adrian, great, perfect. I think that was great. So I like the fact that you went for just the relevant information. You didn't just, you didn't focus on the details, like whether they get happy face stickers or whether the teacher tells them that she's proud, or what they do to misbehave, like they don't pay attention, or they don't sit quietly. So you went for these things that I marked, and let's talk about that. And actually, your ideas were connected, right? You said, so if they misbehave or they behave badly, then they get punished. That's cause effect, right? And then you say, so, or as a result, they learn. And on the other hand, the opposite, if they behave well, then they get rewarded. Again, cause effect, and then another, like before and after, right? So finally, at the end of the day, they learn, and you can connect it back to the definition, right? You could say, so that's how they learn how to behave based on the consequences of their initial behavior, right? So you're putting all the ideas together, and you're actually also connecting it to the definition that you got here. And that's exactly what you guys have to do in your response, okay? You wanna focus on what's important. You wanna use those transitions to help you connect ideas, like on the other hand, if they do this, then this happens. And then as a result, they learn. Or finally, they learn. Or afterwards, they learn, right? So use those transitions whenever you can to help you out and connect ideas and focus on what's important. Another thing you guys want to do, and this is what Adrian did, right? Connect it to the definition. If we pay attention to the question, it goes, using the example from the lecture, explain what behavior modification is and how it works. So in the question, it's not like question 2, right? Question 2, you got briefly summarize the reading, then state the student's opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. So it's all very direct and very objective, right? In this case, they are not saying first summarize the reading, then summarize the lecture, the example. They're saying using the example, explain the topic. So you are gonna act like another professor explaining what's more the topic, but of course you're gonna report what the first professor said. So that's why your ideas need to be connected. And whenever you can, if at the end you can kind of, like if you're saying, instead of saying individuals, now you're gonna say kids, change their behavior based on, and then you tell me how they have behaved in class. So if you can make that connection, then that's great. So that's it. All right, that's for the lecture, just focus on the connection of ideas. In case you got biology, it gets a bit harder, I'm not gonna lie. I think we can hurry up and do one biology and one business as well. So let's do that. Let's focus on this one now. So, all right, any questions about the lecture? Okay, guys, so regarding your response, what you have to do, remember you got 60 seconds, and the most important part is always gonna be the listening, right? So you wanna focus more there. Now, at the beginning though, you need a short introduction in which you're gonna be providing context and summarizing the reading, and not even summarizing, you're gonna be telling or defining the topic. So you're gonna say something like, according to the reading passage, behavior modification is when individuals change their behavior based on what they learn about the consequences of their actions. So that's it. Okay, where are we? That's your introduction. It shouldn't last longer than 15 seconds. That's the most that you can spend there. So according to the passage, behavior modification is when people do this and that. That's it. Now, then you're gonna be moving on to the lecture. And make sure to use a transition there, whatever you want to use, something like furthermore, the professor illustrates this with the example of, or if you want to sound a bit fancy, you could say in the lecture, the professor further digs into this concept or illustrates the concept by providing the example of, and here's your chance to summarize the example, okay? So you just did what Adrian did. You say something like the example of kids in a school. And you don't forget to use the reporting verbs, right? Something like, he explains, so with the example of kids in school, he explains that if they misbehave, they get punished. On the other hand, if they behave well, they get rewarded. As a result, they learn how to behave and how to get more rewards and punishment. Therefore, that's how kids change their behavior based on their initial actions, right? Or the consequences brought by the teacher in school. So that's pretty much it, what you have to do, guys. Don't forget to use reporting verbs, to use a transition, to summarize the reading. And that's it. At the end, if you have extra time, if you want to give a conclusion, you can do it. It's not necessary, but you can. So you can say something like, so that's how the professor illustrates this concept or demonstrates this concept. If you want something longer, you can say, so that's how, by using the example of kids in school, the professor demonstrates the, behavior modification, right? So we're done with it. All right, so questions, guys? Anything or comments about the task, response, anything? Okay, so now we're gonna do a business one. And this time it's your turn. So you're up now, you're gonna do it. Let me show you. We are in. Okay. second. All right. All right, guys, sorry for that. So here's the reading, and I'll give you all 50 seconds to read, which is what you would have. So 50 seconds, you know what to do, title and definition. 50 seconds. Okay, guys. Now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a marketing class. Nowadays, something you notice more and more is television commercials that are made specifically for certain television programs. So, let's say a company wants to sell a telephone, a cell phone. Now, during TV shows that young people watch, shows with pop music or teen serials, they create a commercial that emphasizes how fun the phone is. The phone has bright colors, and they show kids having a good time with their friends. And, well, the company wants the kids watching TV at this time to want to buy this phone that's made especially for them. But the same company will make a different commercial to be shown during, say, a program about business or a business news show. Now, for this group of people, business people, the company will have to show how efficient their phone is, how to handle all business and maybe even save money. And here's the thing. It's basically the same phone. The company has just made different commercials to appeal to different groups of people. Using the professor's examples, explain the advertising technique of target marketing.
So read the question as well, advertising technique of target marketing. There you have kind of part of the definition as well. So now you'll have 30 seconds to prepare your responses, and then we'll do it. So. Okay, guys. So, will anybody want to try? Who wants to go first?
I can.
Okay, great, Gaetano. So, I'll leave you with a template here. You know, in this case, it was a business topic. You had kind of like sort of two examples. I think it was kind of the same one, but divided into two. So the only difference in the template will be that you will add these transitions here, like first and moreover, you know, for the first example and the second one, but that's the only thing. So if you're ready, you can start now.
According to the reading passage, targeting marketing is the strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences. First, he explained that one enterprise that want to sell a phone to teens, they show this cell phone in TV shows or TV teen series, and they show that the phone is bright, cool color, they can talk with friends, the phone is the person that use this phone is special for habit. On the other hand, if the target is adult people, they show a business show and they show characteristics like phone efficient and save money.
Okay, great. That was very good. We were trying. You just needed there. Okay, what can I say? Don't forget the transition here. I think you missed it. So you went for the definition according to the passage. Target marketing is, and you forgot to use this transition, right? Remember to add, even if it's a, but to add a transition for the lecture. I like the way you did it. You know, I like the way at the beginning you said, like you gave context on the example of a company that wants to advertise a phone, and then you went for the divisions. You know, first he explains that if their target audience is young people, then they will do this. And then I like the transition that you use as well. You said on the other hand, and that fits great because it's the opposite, right? So on the other hand, the opposite, if they want to do it to an older audience, then they will do that. So I like that you're keeping the structure. Nothing to say really. One thing for you all, check out some business vocabulary. You know, it'll help you out big time to, instead of saying, you know, people, to say, or instead of saying person to say customer, or instead of saying people to say audience, or to know also how to pronounce those words, right? Like franchising or merchandising or customers, products, those kind of words will help you as well. So great, nothing to say really. All right, anybody else wants to do this one?
I can do it.
All right, Nicolas, so you're up now. Go ahead.
Okay, according to the reading passage, target marketing is a strategy that many marketers use to add to very specific audiences in the market. First, the person illustrate this concept, providing the example of how the different type of shows can be used for their type of advertisement, like for in order to get the young audience, they try to look funnier with their ads. And in the other hand, if they want to focus their advertisement to all their customers, they try to show how efficient can be their product or the service in order to get potential customers in the future.
Okay, great. Even time was perfect. You made it just in time. Great. Well done, Nicolas. Also, Gain, I don't have any comments. I think you guys are going so good. Careful grammar tip. Remember, practice unbetter questions, right? So they emphasize how efficient the product can be instead of how efficient the product, how can the product be efficient. So just practice those unbetter questions, I could say. So, but you know, everything is going good, so we're there. All right, guys. You want to do one more, a different one? Yeah, right, to practice.
Try.
You want to do this, the same one?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, okay. So you can go ahead now.
Okay, according to the reading passage, target marketing is a technique to sell a product in the market for a specific audience and with potential customers. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing an example of sales cell phones, and he says that audience, the teenagers audience, look and look music programs and this kind of programs that in these kind of programs, teenagers can saw an announcement of the cell phone. On the other hand, the business customers can call the attention of them in these kind of programs and show how the cell phone works. And that's all.
Okay, good, Camila. Good job. The only thing is that you ran out of time. You were missing some time, but that's okay for the first time. I think you were kind of getting stuck in the first example. So again, you gotta make that quicker. I mean, the whole thing is it has to be quick. So at the beginning, you don't really have to explain that much. So you're just saying like 2 sentences again. It will be 2 sentences and 2 sentences at most for each example. And again, don't try to focus so much on the details, like what type of TV shows teenagers watch. So just tell me, to a younger audience, they will emphasize how fun the phone is. And to an older audience, they will emphasize how efficient the phone is. All right, so you gotta try to listen to those words like fun, efficient, younger, and older audience. And then you're gonna make the connections, the same as we did for the previous one, right? Misbehaving, punishment, behaving well, reward. So you will have to try to identify those keywords so that you're gonna become, I don't know, you're gonna get used to summarizing, I don't know, the ideas a bit more. Careful with the tenses and also the modal verbs, like they can saw an advertisement or they can see, right? So careful with that regarding grammar. The difference between verbs like look, see, watch. And in general, for you guys, for your reporting verbs, always what I always say, try to use different ones than just says, right? So he says that, he explains, mentions, describes, argues, claims. So try to use other ones. Okay, guys, any questions now? Let's do one more. Okay, what's going on here? All right. Okay, so let's do one more. Here's the reading, and you'll have 50 seconds to read. Okay, guys, so let's listen now.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Okay, so this comes up a lot when people make career decisions. A friend of mine from college always wanted to be a film reviewer. He was a film major and he loved movies. Most of all, he loved to write about movies. So when he graduated, he looked for a job as a film reviewer for a newspaper because, as a film reviewer, he'd get to see films for free and would be paid to write about them. That's what he loved. But he couldn't find a job as a film reviewer. So he took a position as a news reporter instead for a newspaper, investigating stories, writing about events, what news reporters do. Now, at first, my friend wasn't sure he'd be any good at this. He'd never been a news reporter before. But eventually, he adjusted and gained confidence, and he got used to the job. And he realized he was actually a pretty good reporter. Anyway, here's the thing. After a few years, the film reviewer for the newspaper where he worked quit, and my friend was offered her job. This was his dream, right? His opportunity to be a film reviewer had finally come, and the new job would actually pay more, too. But did he take the job? Nope, he turned it down. He told me he'd gotten used to being a news reporter, and he just didn't want to try something else. It seemed like too big of a change since, well, there was a chance that the new job might not work out.
Using the example from the lecture, explain the comfort zone bias.
Okay. Now 30 seconds to prepare, and then just one person will do it. Okay, so who wants to go? Anyone wants to go? No? Okay, then it'll have to be you, Liliana, because you're the only one that didn't go.
Can you put the structure, please?
Yes, of course.
Teacher, I can hear all the listening, but I tried to do.
Okay, that's the important part. You try. So go ahead.
According to the reading passage, the people, when to need to do an important decision, they prefer be in the comfort zones and avoid taking risk. The professor illustrates, proving the example of a student wants write a movies, but when he finished his career, he couldn't find a job, so he need to write reports. And when the man have an opportunity to enter to his dream new job and with a better pay, she was afraid for this, and so he prefers to quit in his job doing a reports.
Okay, Liliana, that was actually really good. I think I really like the way you summarized the example, which is something that not a lot of people can do, you know, especially when you got these stories. It's actually quite hard to like know what's relevant, but you went right to you chased to the point and you made it on time. So well done. Okay, so maybe I could say for the example, even though you don't exactly have to mention all the details, I would though try to be a bit more specific. Like instead of saying, a person or a student that wants to be something or has a dream job couldn't, and then she can't find, I don't know, he can't find the job, so he finds a job or another position. I would try to say, you know, the example of a friend of the professor or a friend of his, you know, so I'll be more specific. And he wanted to be, and I'm gonna say what he wanted to be, right? Instead of just saying that he had a dream job, I'm gonna say what the dream job was. So he wanted to be a film reviewer. However, he didn't find that position. As a result, he worked as a news reporter. Afterwards, he got used to working as a news reporter. And finally, when he got the chance to work in what he always wanted, he turned the job down since he was used to it, you know, and he was in his comfort zone and he was experiencing this comfort zone bias. So maybe a bit more specific, not detailed, but specific. And guys, here's a tip for you in case you're not so confident with using the tenses. And when you have stories, you will sometimes have to use them. You know, in this case, it was the past tense. So it might be confusing to use it, you know? So you could actually tell stories in the simple present as well, but make sure that it's the same tense. So you could say something like, so I don't know, illustrate this with the example of his friend. So he wants to be a film reviewer. However, he doesn't find that position. As a result, he starts working as a news reporter. Then he gets the chance to work as a film reviewer, but he turns it down. So you can use the same tense, the simple present, and it works. Believe me, it's a way of telling stories. I don't know if you have ever heard someone speak that way, but you can actually do that. Just make sure that it's the same tense. Okay, careful with the pronouns as well. One tip when you're listening to the lecture and you got a story, write down in big letters whether it's a she or a he, the same in the case of the student, right? So you write down in your paper she, so that you are already like constantly reading that and you don't get confused. Okay, but overall, I think regarding content and structure and time, Liliana, you're good. So maybe some grammar things like the tenses, and you'll be more than good. Okay, guys. Now, any questions or comments about the class or what we've seen today? No questions? Okay, then. So please, before you go, could you answer the questions that I just launched? Okay, it should be there. Okay, guys. So thank you so much for joining. I'll see you all next class.